As the first pale fingers of dawn stretched across the valley, a piercing cry shattered the quiet mist that clung to the trees and the rushing creek. Ayanna, 12 years old, and the cherished daughter of Chief Takakoda, froze mid-step, her heart hammering in her chest. She had always been cautious, taught from the moment she could walk that the lands beyond the tribe's territory were unpredictable, dangerous, and not meant for children. Yet here she was, wading through the thick underbrush near the creek, in search of herbs. Her mother needed her keen eyes, scanning for the delicate green leaves that could soothe fever or mend wounds. A single misstep on the slippery moss-covered stones, and she slipped, her ankle twisting violently beneath her. The sharp pain shot through her leg, leaving her gasping and teetering dangerously close to the swift current. The creek, swollen from recent rains, surged with a power that could carry away even a grown man. Its icy waters churned over jagged rocks, and the roar of the current filled the air like a warning. Ayanna clutched a nearby branch, trying to steady herself, but every movement sent searing pain up her leg. Panic gripped her as she realized she could not make it back to the safety of the camp on her own. For the first time, the weight of her isolation pressed down upon her. Though brave and clever, she was still a child, and the vast wilderness surrounding her offered no mercy. Back in the heart of the Apache territory, worry was spreading like wildfire. Scouts and elders had noticed her absence, and whispers of fear passed quickly among the tribe. Ayanna's mother, her mother's eyes wide with dread, clutched the ceremonial beadwork that marked her daughter's place in the lineage. The chief, stoic and commanding, had already dispatched search parties, their silhouettes fading into the early morning fog as they combed through the valleys, the woods, and along the treacherous creek beds. Every minute that passed without news tightened a knot of anxiety among the warriors. Meanwhile, just beyond the border of the Apache lands, the settlers of Dustwood Valley were stirring awake to the usual routine of trading posts, horses, and dust-choked roads. Yet, beneath the mundane morning, an old tension lingered, a simmering unease born of decades of mistrust. The Apache and the settlers had long maintained a fragile truce, a balance of cautious respect and whispered suspicion. Stories of stolen horses, trespassing scouts, and misunderstandings had painted a backdrop of wary coexistence. To the settlers, a missing child in the Apache lands was not only alarming, it was a dangerous unknown. The valley itself seemed to hold its breath. Towering pines and rugged ridges framed the scene, their shadows still long and cold as the sun crept higher. The creek's waters, white-capped and swift, snaked through the forest, like a silver ribbon reflecting the pale morning light. The scent of wet earth pine resin and the faint smoke from distant campfires filled the air. For a boy or girl raised among these lands, these sights might be familiar. For Ayanna, whose life had been carefully bound to the rhythms of her tribe, the wilderness was suddenly threatening, unpredictable, and full of peril. Yet even in her fear, there was something unyielding in her spirit. Ayanna had been taught that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Every twist of pain, every slippery step forced her to consider her options. Stay where she was, risk hypothermia or worse, or try to crawl back to safety, risking the current and the jagged rocks. Her mind raced, calculating the dangers, weighing her choices, and despite the quiver of terror in her chest, a flicker of resolve burned bright. In that quiet, tense dawn, with mist curling around her, and the creek roaring like an untamed beast, the story of Ayanna, a story of bravery, survival, and the fragile line between life and death was only just beginning. Every listener, especially those who had known the wild expanses of the West themselves, could feel the pulse of the land and the stakes of this moment. The tension was real, the danger palpable, and the courage required nothing short of heroic. Pain shot through Ayanna's leg, with every tentative movement forcing her to gasp and clutch at the slick stones along the creek's edge. The cold water rushed past her, relentless and unyielding, biting through the thin leather of her moccasins and numbing her toes. She pressed herself against a jagged rock, trying to brace for the pull of the current, but the creek seemed almost alive, tugging at her, with a strength far beyond her small frame. Each step forward was a battle, each slip a reminder of how fragile her position was. Her vision blurred as tears mingled with the spray of the rushing water. She had faced trials before, but never like this. The wilderness, which had always been a place of lessons and quiet observation, had become a merciless adversary. Yet, in the back of her mind, a spark of determination refused to die. She knew that surrendering to fear was not an option, not for herself, not for her tribe. Every second she lingered in the icy torrent increased the risk, and Ayanna understood that her disappearance could cast a shadow over her family's honor. The chief's reputation, the pride of the Apache people, and the trust the tribe placed in her were all fragile threads now tied to her survival. She took a deep, shuddering breath and tried again, testing the footing under her ankle. Sharp pain shot up her leg as she shifted weight, but she forced herself to keep moving, step by painstaking step. The current roared in her ears, drowning out the birdsong and the wind in the pines. The stones under her feet were treacherously slick with moss, slick enough to send her toppling at any moment. She stumbled, clawing at a root jutting from the bank, and the water surged around her knees. She could feel her muscles trembling from the strain, but she pushed on. Every inch forward was an act of courage, each movement a test of her resolve. Her mind spun with thoughts of her father and mother of the tribe waiting for her, and of the responsibility that weighed so heavily on her small shoulders. In that moment, courage was not an abstract notion, it was her only lifeline. She clenched her jaw and focused, imagining the faces of her people, the trust they had in her, and the disappointment that would follow if she failed. Then through the swirling mist and the white spray of the creek movement caught her eye. At first she thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow among the trees. But soon she saw the figure of a man standing on the bank, partially hidden behind a cluster of pines. His presence made her stomach knot. Was he friend or foe? Could he be a threat sent by the settlers who still viewed her people with suspicion, or against the odds might he be there to help? Her heart pounded as she weighed her options. The thought of trusting a stranger was terrifying, yet she had little choice. Staying where she was meant certain injury or worse. The cold gnawed at her body, and the creek's roar seemed to taunt her indecision. She took another careful step, her gaze never leaving the mysterious figure. Her mind raced with strategy. Keep moving toward the bank, maintain balance, and be ready to defend herself if necessary. Ayanna's determination flared like a fire in the foggy dawn. The pain in her leg was immense, but stronger still was the resolve that had been instilled in her from birth to act with courage and protect the honor of her people. She was not just fighting for her life, she was fighting for the integrity of her tribe, for the trust placed in her by those who depended on her. In that moment, fear existed only as a challenge to overcome. The figure on the bank shifted slightly, and Ayanna caught a glimpse of his face, sunlight glinting on a weathered hat, and the edge of a rifle slung casually at his side. Relief and trepidation mingled inside her. Whoever he was, his presence changed the stakes. The danger was far from over, but now there was a possibility that she might not face this trial alone. Every muscle ached, every breath burned in her lungs, yet the fire of courage within her refused to be extinguished. The fight for survival, for honor, and for the trust of her people had only just begun. Through the mist and the roar of the creek, a figure emerged on the far bank. Tommy, a young man from the settlement just beyond the woods. He had been tracking deer along the creek, unaware that fate was about to place him squarely in the path of a life-or-death moment. When he saw the small Apache girl struggling against the merciless current, his breath caught. Without hesitation, he kicked off his boots and waded into the icy water, the chill biting through his thick trousers as the current yanked at his legs. Every step was a fight, every slip a reminder of how treacherous the creek had become. Yet he pressed forward, guided by instinct, by the undeniable urgency of a life hanging in the balance. Ayanna watched him with wide, fearful eyes, unsure whether this stranger was friend or foe. But his movements were deliberate, careful and steady, and in that moment, trust became the only option. Tommy reached her side, bracing her under his arm, and together they navigated the slippery rocks and the rushing water. Each step was a struggle. The creek seemed determined to sweep them away, but Tommy's determination proved stronger. At last, they reached the relative safety of the far bank, collapsing together on the damp earth lungs, burning hearts hammering in unison. Though they could not speak each other's language, communication became instinctive. Ayanna pointed to her leg, grimacing in pain, and Tommy nodded, fetching strips of cloth from his pack to fashion a makeshift splint. She studied his careful movements, realizing that although they came from entirely different worlds, action and intent could bridge any gap. He handed her water from his canteen, and she offered a small bundle of herbs, in return a silent gesture of gratitude. In those simple exchanges, a fragile trust began to form a connection that transcended words. The air carried tension beyond the creek itself. Word of a missing Apache girl and a white settler in the woods would not stay secret. Within the settlement, rumors stirred quickly. Some townsfolk watched from a distance, whispering with suspicion. Could Tommy be leading danger into the heart of the tribe, or was he an unlikely savior? The history between settlers and Apache people cast a long shadow over this small act of courage. Every gesture, every choice now bore consequences beyond the immediate moment. Yet within this charged environment, a bond was quietly forming, an understanding that life and compassion could rise above fear and prejudice. As night fell, Ayanna, her leg bandaged but still painful, found herself sitting beside a small fire Tommy had built to keep them warm. She retrieved a small piece of cloth from her pack and began to carefully embroider a symbol, intricate and deliberate in the quiet language of her people. Each stitch was a message, a beacon for the tribe to follow, a silent communication of where she'd been saved. The firelight flickered across her concentrated face, reflecting determination and ingenuity. Tommy watched curiously, unaware of the full meaning, but recognizing the care and importance behind the act. Through the night, the creek's gentle babble and the whispering wind became a backdrop to this unexpected alliance. Ayanna rested against Tommy's shoulder briefly, sensing that even a simple human act offering help in the midst of danger could ripple far beyond the moment. For the first time, she considered the possibility that people from different worlds could cooperate, even thrive together, when guided by courage and decency. By the time dawn neared, the embroidered symbol was complete. It was more than a message, it was hope, trust, and a link between two disparate worlds. Tommy, seeing her satisfaction, gave a quiet nod, sensing that their actions would reverberate far beyond the creek. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival was evolving into something greater, a bridge between tribe and settlement, between fear and understanding, all born from a single courageous act. By the time the first streaks of dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and golds, the valley was alive with movement far beyond the creek. Ayanna's eyes widened as a low rhythmic drumming began to echo through the trees, reverberating off the rugged cliffs and into the misty morning. One drumbeat, then another, growing louder and more insistent until the entire valley seemed to pulse with it. Then came the sight that made her breath catch, the silhouettes of warriors, mounted on painted horses, stretching as far as her eyes could see. 500 strong, the Apache had arrived. The warriors' faces were painted with intricate designs, feathers adorning their hair, weapons glinting in the rising sun. The rhythmic beating of drums mixed with chants in the native tongue, creating a sound both terrifying and mesmerizing. Ayanna felt her heart pound, but not from fear. There was relief, awe, and a stirring pride in seeing the power and unity of her people displayed so vividly. This was her family, her tribe, and now she stood at the center of their attention. Tommy, standing beside her, instinctively lowered his gaze, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. He had acted out of simple courage the day before, but he now faced the full weight of what those actions had unleashed. Ayanna gently pressed a hand against his arm and pointed to the embroidered cloth she'd crafted overnight. Carefully, she held it up so her father, Chief Takakota, could see it. The symbol, a delicate combination of a bird in flight and an open hand, communicated everything she could not say aloud: trust, gratitude, and the truth of Tommy's help. The chief, mounted on his white stallion, surveyed the scene with a commanding presence. The morning light caught the contours of his weathered face, the long black hair decorated with sacred feathers, and the broad shoulders that seemed to carry not just his own strength, but the dignity of his entire people. Slowly, he dismounted and approached Ayanna, his eyes scanning between her and Tommy. There was no anger here, only curiosity, and a measured patience that spoke of a leader who weighed every gesture and every word with care. Ayanna stepped forward, her injured leg forcing her to limp, but her chin held high. She gestured toward Tommy and then to herself, repeating the sequence of gestures she had practiced with the cloth. Her father's eyes softened as recognition dawned. He understood that this outsider had saved his daughter's life. The tension that could have erupted into suspicion or conflict melted away under the weight of courage and compassion displayed the day before. The chief's expression shifted from cautious evaluation to warm approval. Around him, the warriors began to relax, forming a ceremonial arrangement rather than a battle line. There was an audible sense of relief, a communal recognition that life had been preserved, not endangered. The scene was breathtaking, 500 warriors, each poised, yet attentive, sharing a silent understanding that the smallest acts of bravery could ripple across worlds. Tommy exhaled slowly, the reality of the moment sinking in. He had acted without thought of reward or recognition, but now his simple choice to help a child in need had bridged the gap between the settlement and the Apache tribe. The valley, once a place of potential conflict, now radiated a sense of connection and mutual respect. Ayanna, though still small and injured, had become a conduit for understanding between two very different cultures. Chief Takakota gestured for Tommy to approach, and the young man obeyed with careful steps. There were no words at first, only looks, nods, and the silent weight of respect passing between them. Tommy realized that bravery had its own language, one that needed no translation. Action, honor, and courage spoke louder than any spoken word. Ayanna squeezed his hand gently, conveying the gratitude and trust of her people in that simple human gesture. As the sun rose fully over the valley, painting the warriors and the creek in gold, a deep warmth spread through Ayanna and Tommy alike. The awe-inspiring display of strength, the silent acknowledgement of bravery, and the unity forged in the face of danger left both of them and any witness breathless. What had begun as a desperate struggle for survival had transformed into a moment of profound human connection. Through courage and kindness, the impossible had been made real. Two worlds, once separated by fear and misunderstanding, were now linked forever by trust, honor, and the bravery of a single act. As the sun rose higher over the valley, a sense of calm and fulfillment spread through the land. The Apache warriors had begun their journey home, their horses' hooves stirring soft clouds of dust as they moved with the measured precision of a people united. Yet Ayanna and Tommy remained by the creek, their hearts still racing from the events of the previous day. What had begun as a perilous struggle for survival had blossomed into something far greater, a bridge between two worlds built on courage, compassion, and the simplest acts of humanity. The tribe had taken it upon themselves to repair and improve Tommy's cabin. The once modest shelter was transformed into a sturdy home, capable of withstanding harsh winters. Walls were reinforced with careful craftsmanship, windows enlarged and fitted with glass, and the beams were carved with intricate designs that told the story of connection and respect between the Apache and the settlers. For Ayanna, seeing the cabin take on new life brought both relief and pride. This was more than shelter. It was a symbol of trust, cooperation, and the unexpected rewards of bravery and kindness. Through the quiet hours of the day, the lessons became clear. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Compassion could transcend language, culture, and tradition, creating bonds where suspicion had once prevailed. A single choice, a small act of help, could ripple outward, changing lives and altering relationships across communities. Tommy's decision to aid Ayanna had saved a life, but it had also rewritten the dynamic between the settlers and the Apache, showing that respect and empathy could bridge gaps long thought unbridgeable. Ayanna observed the cooperation between the tribe and Tommy, watching as warriors worked alongside settlers to carry supplies, repair structures, and prepare the home for the coming winter. Every gesture of help reinforced the truth she had long known: honor, courage, and empathy could overcome fear and misunderstanding. She looked at Tommy, sharing a quiet smile, and their laughter mingled with the gentle babble of the creek and the distant hum of departing warriors. In that simple moment, the valley itself seemed to celebrate the newfound harmony. Her eyes fell on the embroidered symbol she had stitched a bird in flight with an outstretched hand, and she realized its significance. That simple design had guided her. People communicated trust and ensured safety. It had become a tangible reminder that even small acts of courage and kindness could leave a lasting impact, creating hope and connection between worlds that had long remained separate. Through their actions, Ayanna and Tommy had become living symbols of bravery, humanity, and cooperation. As evening approached, the warm glow of the setting sun bathed the valley in gold, highlighting the transformed cabin and the figures of Ayanna and Tommy seated side by side. They spoke through gestures, laughter, and occasional broken words, yet the meaning was unmistakable. Bridges could be built even in times of fear and uncertainty. Their courage and kindness had fostered understanding, healed old tensions, and created a foundation for lasting friendship and cooperation between the Apache and the settlers. And so the story draws to its close. Through bravery and compassion, Ayanna and Tommy had shown that even the smallest acts could ripple outward to transform lives, mend divisions, and build lasting connections. The valley now stood not only as a testament to survival, but as a symbol of hope, unity, and the remarkable potential of human kindness. If this story has touched your heart, we invite you to join us on Epic Western Stories. Follow the channel, share, like, and leave a comment below to continue exploring the Wild West through tales of courage, humanity, and connection. The frontier may be wild, but the human heart is wilder still, capable of bridging divides, forging friendships, and creating legacies that endure across time and culture.